might have noticed that Liverpool's winning the Premier League the same way that you might have noticed that I'm still on the run. I am still sitting here up against a white wall, doing my absolute darndest to talk about random, interesting, or fun things to talk about in the footballing world. And one of those things has to do with Liverpool. Again, a club that I don't know if you've ever heard of, but I'll do my best to explain to you who Liverpool is and so on and so forth. See, they're this team with a lot of history, and some of that, granted a very small slice of it, has been made recently. And they won a Champions League, they won the league, and they look like they're in line for a second league title, which will finally put to bed the on repeat video of Steven Gerrard slipping with the title on the line. That will become a more and more distant memory until maybe Liverpool fans will be able to sleep without nightmares. And that's, of course, only if they manage to not blow it over the last 7 matches, which is entirely possible. But they are not going to blow it if if the cause of blowing it would be discord in the locker room. Because they've kind of had that all year. This awkward tension around Mo Salah and Virgil van Dijk. And I'll drop the charade of pretending you don't know who Liverpool is, because obviously both of those guys are hugely important to what they do. Both of them have been tap dancing around potentially not re-signing their contracts and playing this game out in public. And it's a very familiar game to people that study the art of getting new contracts and transfers in football. I consider myself I'm something of a transfer expert myself. Not really. Not at all. I mean, does this look like a transfer expert? But people have been doing this more and more where you're running your contract down and you leave. But for some reason from the get-go, this always felt like it wasn't the case, right? This wasn't a Trent Alexander-Arnold or Kylian Mbappe situation where you're running your clock down so that you can go, and once it hits midnight, you just go off to Real Madrid and he's like the evil witch in the West or something. I don't know, I'm mixing up my fairy tales. Mo Salah just felt like, in particular, he was negotiating for a bigger, better contract. And it looks like what they've settled on is a 2-year deal. And this is obviously huge news for Liverpool. This is huge news for everybody else in the Premier League and a bunch of sad people in Saudi Arabia who thought that they probably had a good chance to sign Mo Salah. But I'll just come out and say it. I'm surprised. I am surprised Mo Salah took this deal. I would have figured that if he was negotiating as hard as he was, he wanted more years and more financial security than this. It's only a 2-year deal. 2 years. For Mo Salah, who for 8 years has been one of the, if not the best winger in the Premier League. For all of those 8 years. And he's only getting a 2-year, like, I understand if you're Liverpool, you're looking at Mo Salah, right? And you're saying, well, all right, he's 32. Do we really want to go longer than that? I mean, at the end of this contract, he's going to be freaking 34 years old, man. At the end of the contract. I mean, let's stop pretending that it's a universal thing that these players get bad. Some do, right by this age. Neymar, his ankles have been shredded since he was 19. Okay, the guy's had injury issues his entire career, and he takes his sister's birthday off every year. Neymar was going to flame out early. But somebody like Mo Salah, he doesn't give the same vibe to me as somebody that's going to flame out. Somebody that's just going to become unable to do the job. A lot can change in 2 years. That's the risk of taking on a longer contract. I just figured the way this negotiation had gone, that any contract that Mo Salah signed with Liverpool was going to be longer than 2 years. Also, what that means is that he is for sure gone in 2 years. For sure gone. I think that the only reason he's doing this 2-year deal is because he knows there's more financial security waiting for him. There would be no other reason for him to take this. He could have gone to a bunch of other leagues in Europe if he wanted to. Even if he doesn't want to do that, he could have gone to Saudi Arabia or MLS, which I didn't hear a lot about. But both of those leagues would have given him the bag. Like the absolute bag to go there. And they would have given him well over 2 years if he wanted it. Right? What he was looking for was some way to stay at Liverpool, but also guarantee his long-term future. I thought it was going to be Liverpool giving him a 4-year contract that runs out when he's 36. Maybe a 3-year contract if they do a good job and they pay a high salary that runs out when he's 35. But a 2-year contract is wild. It's a great deal for Liverpool. This is a great deal for Liverpool because you're not assuming the risk for that most dangerous last year or two at 35 or 36, where it is obviously getting more and more likely that he's not going to be able to play at the maximum level that he's been playing at the past 8 years. Each year you go on, it's more likely you're not going to get that same player anymore. We're not developing. The trajectory is not upward at this point. I mean, sure, it could be. Boy, I'm going to look like an idiot if he scores 40 goals next year and 45 the year after that. But generally speaking, that's not going to happen. And now they've got those 2 more years, and they know. They know 2 years out they're going to need to replace Mo Salah in his position. And it's not just him. This is just masterful from Liverpool all the way around because Virgil van Dijk is, this according to the Times, right? He's agreed to extend his contract as well. Virgil van Dijk also expected to sign a new 2-year deal. So you have given a last hurrah of 2 more years to these two guys that have helped build this club and lead this club to heights that it wasn't able to reach largely for the previous 30. You have a 2-year hurrah, and then you know you need to replace them. One of the best things you can do as a director of football, as a general manager, as the owner of a club, is have a timeline laid out. Right? It's just a nice editing timeline laid out where you can see what moves are needed in the future, what things you're going to need to do in order to keep your team good and keep the ball rolling. Liverpool has that now. Salah and Van Dijk are gone after 2 years. I would put it at less than a 10% chance that either of them are there, starting a third season from now. It's possible, maybe somebody gets injured or he does score 40 and 35 goals in 2 years and you're like, well, shoot, we want to keep him around and see you throw together another giant 2-year offer and send it his way. Right? But generally speaking, you're to see a slight decline. He's going to continue to deliver at a high level, and then you just let him go. And I think, and I touched on this earlier, but I'll dive into it now, that Mo Salah is only doing this because he's got somebody on the phone in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, in MLS, wherever he wants to go, that's saying, hey, when that contract runs out, we're going to throw you a bag. We're going to throw you a 4-year deal. You can play till you're 38, make a ton of money. Your family will be happy, whatever you want to do. Because Mo Salah is the type of player that brings with him that tidal wave of support, particularly in the Muslim world and the Arab world. Right? If you're going into Egypt, you're going into Saudi Arabia, he is like the marquee guy. I would say if you're talking North Africa and the Middle East in particular, he's the best player from that part of the world, and it's not super close. He's in line for potentially winning the Ballon d'Or, right? That conversation died out a little bit when he got bumped out of the Champions League, right? But he's in the conversation. And people from that part of the world are not normally in the conversation. That is the number one selling point I could possibly imagine if you're Saudi Arabia, which means the money they would pay, the years they would give him, the generational wealth he'd be able to accrue at the end of this 2-year contract in Saudi Arabia is fucking nuts. And it's there. So basically, if you're a Liverpool fan, rejoice. Be happy. You're now on the clock. The clock has officially started. Pen has hit the paper. And you've got to figure out exactly how you're going to replace 2 huge holes in your lineup over the next 2 years. Because once that 2-year clock is up, that's when shit gets real. Okay, because once that 2-year clock is up, you don't have Mo Salah or Virgil van Dijk anymore. I'm not stunned that either of them are re-signed. I'm happy because it's great to see great players continue. I like players staying at the same club for a long time. It makes football more familiar. It makes it feel better in a lot of ways when guys aren't moving around too much. And so I'm happy that this happened. I'm happy for Mo. I'm happy for Verge. I think it's great. Liverpool's going to try and defend their title next year, assuming they can hold on to this one and go for another Champions League and another FA and whatever. And that's all going to be well and good for the next 2 years. The clock has begun. Let's make no bones about it. This is the beginning of the next era for Liverpool. That's all. It's the beginning of the next era.